everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm so sorry for that technical glitch, but I just want to thank you all for being here. I'm Tina Zottoli, an associate professor of psychology here at Montclair State University. I'm really delighted to moderate this conversation tonight with Lee Clark and the Proof Podcast team. Before we get started, just a few pieces of business. When you arrived tonight, you should have received an index card and a pencil. Did everybody get one of those? Okay, terrific. Please use those to submit questions for the panel. My students will be wandering around towards the end of the panel discussion to collect those from you. If you put your name on the card, we're happy to call on you, but you're also welcome to submit anonymously. You don't have to, you can definitely just, stay private. As a reminder, there is a reception immediately following this discussion. It'll be held in Cohen Hall, which is just next door. There's food and it'll be fun and you'll get out and drink and you'll have an opportunity to continue the conversation because there's so much to talk about and it's unlikely we'll get through all of it tonight. And Dr. Allison Redlick is here in where is out? There she is. There's Allison. She's joining us from George Mason University. She's a highly regarded scholar in the field of psychology and law, and much of her work centers on issues of wrongful conviction. She's also one of my dearest friends, and I'm so happy she's here. So this will be really nice. Before I introduce our opening speaker, I do want to thank the Psychology and Justice Studies departments who have sponsored this event, and the dean of our college, Dr. Fatma Amili, who provided some of the food for the reception. I also want to give a shout out to Minnie Parker and Maureen Korbeski in psychology because not only did they manage my neuroses, they also took care of all the administrative things that I think the neuroses were more challenging, but you can ask them. And then finally, special thanks to Tierney, doctoral student extraordinaire, who basically did all of this. So anyway, without further ado, let me introduce Professor Taya Johnson, who will provide opening remarks. Professor Johnson is a professor of law at Rutgers University School of Law. Her scholarship concerns the development of criminal adversarial systems with an eye toward how lawyers and policymakers can improve the fairness of the criminal justice system. Her recent scholarship, and also how we know each other, focuses on plea bargaining in the criminal courts. And I guess she's perhaps best known in that area for her work on fictional pleas. So pleas where defendants are pleading guilty to charges that bear virtually no semblance to the facts in the case. Prior to joining the faculty at Rutgers Law, Taya was an associate professor of law at the University of Maine School of Law, where she was awarded Law Professor of the Year in 2019 and 2020. And I understand why that would be the case, having now known her for a few years myself. She was also a Thomas C. Gray Fellow at Stanford Law School and a public defender with both the Federal Defenders of New York and the Criminal Defense Division of the Legal Aid Society in New York. And fun fact, Professor Johnson graduated from the George Washington University School of Law, where she went with Susan Simpson, who will be on our panel tonight. So please welcome Taya Johnson.
So right here, Tina?
That's what Tierney tells me.
A little bit right here. Perfect.
Right here. Okay, great. Well, I'm really honored to be here tonight, and I thank Professor Tina Zottoli for the invitation and the opportunity to introduce this really remarkable group of people. I want to say how grateful I am for the work of Susan Simpson, my 1L law school classmate, Jacinda Davis and Kevin Fitzpatrick, that allows us all to now have this extraordinary opportunity to sit here live and in person with Lee Clark. And I really want to extend a huge thank you to Lee Clark for being willing to share his experience with all of us. I think really the only way we can kind of get a meaningful sense of the injustice of wrongful convictions is by hearing the real stories. The podcast, of course, tells this story, but to be able to hear from you personally is really an honor. So thank you so much. For those who haven't listened to the podcast, let me give you the most briefest of overviews, a super brief but overview of Mr. Clark's story. Mr. Clark was charged as a teenager in connection with the death of another teenager in his friend group, Brian Bowling. It's now well accepted that Brian Bowling died of a self-inflicted gunshot during a tragic game of Russian roulette. Despite the fact that Mr. Clark was not even at the scene of the shooting, he was, much after Mr. Bowling's death, charged with conspiring to commit murder with another friend of his, Kane Joshua Story, and the podcast tells about both of their stories. The case was built on deeply flawed, sometimes purely made up evidence. There were witnesses who were coerced into testifying, witnesses who testified based on sort of mistaken interpretations. And despite all of this, Mr. Clark and Mr. Story were convicted and spent 25 years incarcerated before the amazing work of the Proof podcast team and a team of lawyers helped get them out. I really encourage you to listen to the podcast if you haven't already. I think it's a portrait of so many things that can and do go wrong in the criminal system every day. It's about intolerably shoddy and malicious police work. It's about the use of coerced testimony and deeply suspect informant testimony. It's about the ways that courts fail to gatekeep evidence, particularly forensic evidence. And so, the list goes on and on. I was just talking to Susan about sort of plea bargain issues that arise in the podcast. So the podcast really does paint this picture of this case, but also of a system and really the deep flaws with that system. I want to talk just about two things tonight that stood out for me to kind of give context to our conversation tonight. And the first one, to me seems almost too obvious, but I often feel, especially when I start teaching 1L criminal law, that it's something I have to mention and really drive home. It's the power of the prosecutor is really profound, more profound, I think, than we can fully understand. And it's an easy thing to say, but I think Mr. Clark's story reminds us that we put huge, largely unchecked power in the hands of prosecutors across this country. And we ask them to make rational and ethical choices, and I think often they do. But when they don't, even our system of trials doesn't protect us from unethical, poor performance by the state, and nor does our system of appeals. Once a prosecutor makes a decision to charge someone with a crime, I often liken it to being trapped on a ride, right? The defendant is now trapped on a ride that he can't get off of. And this is true even when, as in the case here, there was no crime committed. There wasn't a crime in the first place. Professor Jessica Henry, who's a professor here at Montclair State, has written a terrific book, Smoke But No Fire, about innocent people who are convicted of crimes that simply never happened. And so we see that here. And what we see is that the police and prosecutors took a tragic death of a teenager and turned it into a crime through their awesome and largely unchecked charging power. And once they made that decision, it was almost impossible to correct. The other thing that the podcast, again, it's pretty obvious, but it was, worth noting, highlights is how important these sorts of projects are. Projects like the Proof podcast that uncover truth and sort of are working to achieve justice in these terribly unjust situations. Our panelists have dedicated themselves to this sort of investigative reporting, both through the Proof podcast and other incredibly important projects. And I'm thinking of Susan's previous podcast, Undisclosed, which investigated 27 wrongful convictions over 10 years and resulted in 13 exonerations, 2 stays of execution, 1 commutation from death row, 2 commutations of sentence, 1 grant of parole, and 1 vacated conviction. I'm thinking of other podcasts like season 2 of In the Dark, which I highly recommend, which finally flooded light onto the Curtis Flowers case, eventually helping that case make its way to the US Supreme Court, where it achieved some semblance of justice. I was a criminal defense attorney, as Professor Zottoli noted, in a previous life, and I really believe in that work. But I think we just see that there are limits to what attorneys can and do in these sorts of cases. And while we work to make the world a fairer place and the criminal system a fairer place, I think that podcasts like Proof have such an important role to play to mirror back to us the worst parts of our criminal system. So I'm very excited for today's conversation. Again, thank you all, and I'll turn it over to Professor Zottoli. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, please welcome Lee Clark and the Proof podcast. When you guys come on up. you, Jacinda.
Not on Friday.
That's you. Kevin's in there. There we go. Close quarters. Okay. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce the Proof podcast team. So excited to have them here. I'm just going to give a brief bio for each of them. Yes, I'll go in the order that they're seated, but Jacinda Davis is the co-host of Proof. Many of you already know that, an executive producer at Red Marble Media, where she develops and produces true crime series, including Evil Lives Here. She's also a two-time Emmy Award winner for the Discovery Channel's Vietnam Prisoners of War, Stories of Survival, and HBO's The Curse of the Bambino. She lives in Montclair with her husband and 3 sons, and that was quite convenient for putting this together. And next, Kevin Fitzpatrick. He's the president and founder of Red Marble Media and executive producer and contributing host to the wrongful conviction podcast, Proof. Among his many credits are Evil Lives Here, Shattered, Two Shallow Graves, and Killer in Question. Prior to starting Red Marble, Kevin managed programming for multiple television networks, including the History Channel, Court TV, Discovery Networks, and the National Geographic Channel. Lee, I'm going to save you for last because you're the guest of honor, so we'll do Susan next, and I'll come back to you. Susan Simpson is an attorney in Washington, D.C. She became a podcaster in 2015 when I became her biggest fan with the launch of Undisclosed, which she co-hosted for 6 years. As Taya just noted, I won't repeat all of the accolades, but Susan has contributed to the exonerations of 13 people, and now Proof brings it up to 15. Is that right? I think it's not just 16? Me. I think 16. Sorry, Proof brings it up to 16. It's not just me. I think many of us who work in the area of wrongful convictions feel like we're in the presence of a celebrity. So thank you for being here. And finally, of course, Lee, our guest of honor. Lee, as you all know, was the subject of the first season of the Proof podcast, along with his co-defendant, Kane Joshua Story, who has also been exonerated but could not be with us tonight. But we will share some of the details of Kane's story and his life since exoneration. I got a chance to meet Lee yesterday, and despite the numerous challenges that you will learn about that people who come out of prison after being wrongfully convicted face, Lee has been really successful, and he just started a new landscaping business, and I'm sure he'll tell you more about that. But Lee, it's really wonderful to have you with us tonight, and I want to thank you for coming here to share your story.
I'm glad to be here.
All right. Well, as I said, there's so much to cover. We probably won't get to it all. And I feel like if I just wind this group up, they'll just go and and I won't have to say anything. But I'll start with a question. I think I'd like to go sort of back in time a little bit and just start by asking to tell a little bit about how the two of you met, Susan and Jacinda, and how you got involved and eventually came to Lee's case.
Want me to start? All right. So Kevin and I and Red Marble Media were working on a TV show called Killer in Question, right? And it was a show that was supposed to look at adjudicated cases, but where maybe there was question. It wasn't black and white. People disagreed on it. It wasn't a wrongful conviction show. It was just looking at two sides of a story. And we came across a story about a man in Michigan named Jeff Titus. And I was looking through all the stuff, and I walked into Kevin's office and I said, we have a problem. I think this guy's actually innocent. Like, what do we do with this? And then Joey's case. We started looking at Joey Watkins' case, and I sent a message to Joey's family, and then I got a very nice email from Susan that basically it basically said, "Please stand down." And I was like, "Who is this woman telling me to stand down? Like, I'm going to look at this case."
I didn't say stand down. I was just like, "Oh, we're good."
So I suggested we get drinks, and we over some cocktails started talking about Jeff's case in Michigan, and decided, you know what, we should collaborate and do.
That actually was much later on.
Yeah,
That was COVID.
That was COVID. You're right.
Because for Undisclosed, I was working on a different case that just started, barely started. COVID happened. Everything shut down. There was no FOIA. There was no records requests being done. I couldn't travel. I couldn't interview. So I was like, well, I don't know how this is going to work. And then I thought of Jeff's case. I talked to Jacinda about it. It had caught my eye right away. I was really interested in it. And I knew they'd already done all the records requests. They had the materials. And they had a foothold on the case already. So I was like, look, maybe we can both do it. I'll do it for the podcast. You do it for your TV show. See what happens.
Yeah, so
And-
that case turned into a 2-hour documentary on ID and a season on undisclosed. And that's when
And Jeff walked out.
Jeff walked out a couple years later.
Yeah, there's a really great picture of these two in the Sunday Times, like posing in the woods at Jeff's crime scene.
It's really awkward to pose in the woods.
Yeah,
Then you're a
it's really-
photographer there. You're like, okay, what do we do? Just stand here? Like, just do something natural.
Yeah, I'll stand
We're in
stand
the
on a
woods.
tree trunk.
It's a crazy photograph. Yeah.
So there might be some folks in the audience who aren't familiar with the cases that were covered by Undisclosed. So maybe you should talk a little bit about the Joey Watkins case and Jeff Titus and how that led you, how Joey, I guess, led you to Jeff.
Yeah, so Joey Watkins was season 2 Undisclosed. It was a case from Floyd County, Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, in case you're wondering. And he was convicted for a 2000 case. It was a shooting on a highway. A young college student was tragically shot by another driver and died. The detectives there decided it was his high school rival, Joey Watkins, who they convicted, sentenced to life in prison. He had a co-defendant who was acquitted, but Joey maintained innocence the whole time. Georgia Innocence Project took his case on, and after season 1 of Undisclosed, where we covered Anand's case, we put a call out. Anyone out there got a case that we should look at? Let us know. And GIP wrote in and said, hey, there's this case from Rome, Georgia, and started working on it. Realized something was there. This was a case with a lot of problems going on, and it was an amazing, awful story. So we covered it in the podcast, and unfortunately, Joey's case, I think, took the longest of any case I've worked on so far. He did come home, but it was not till 5, 6 years later.
Yeah.
Same town as Lee.
Yes, yeah.
Same town where.
But at one point, while I was talking to Joey, he basically just like put you on the phone with me. Yeah. He was like, hold on a second, I got someone here to talk to.
In prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In prison. He'd engineered it. He knew that Lee was not going to talk to me on his own. So he basically arranged to call me and just chat casually, knowing that Lee was nearby and he could chug on the phone with me and talk. That's how I met Lee.
Lee, what was that like for you when you got the phone call from the Proof podcast team?
Well, I'll be honest with you. At the time, I got on there talking to her, and early stages of it, she was explaining to me what she was doing for Joey. That they were, she was doing a podcast on him and everything, and she explained to me that she may want to do one on me later, and I didn't know what no podcast was. She went on a podcast. I'm like, what? A podcast? I said, what is that?
Internet radio.
They didn't have that when I went in. That
You had
was
been in for
25 years.
years. No, 20, yeah.
Yeah.
23 years at the time. 23 or 22 at the time, yeah. And I ain't never heard of no podcast, didn't know what it was. And she went explaining it to me. And I'll be honest with you, I'll tell you the truth, I wasn't holding real
really
optimistic
excited.
about it. I wasn't real excited about it to begin with, because I figured they're gonna go out there, go and talk to these people, and all they're gonna dig up is the same lies that everybody was spitting and telling back in. That's all that's gonna be found. Yeah, how wrong I was. I'm glad I was too.
But yeah, you beat Joey out.
Yeah, I did. I beat him out, and I'll tell you when they got on my case and they got the GIP came on board, the Georgia Innocence Project got on board with her help, and when they got on board, it was fast. I don't think I ever even heard of another case rolling through the system to be cleared as fast as this was. I've never heard of it.
Non-DNA cases, I don't know of another.
I never heard of one. It just really shocked me as fast as it moved.
Podcast started in February. He was out in December.
Yeah, out in December. Yeah.
That was
Went in a whole year.
Like everything fell into place, right? Like there was the amazing evidence that was uncovered, and then there was a local attorney, Luke Martin, who had worked in the DA's office in Floyd County, who offered his services to Kane, the other convicted man. And
Yeah, Luke turned out to be a really, really valuable asset.
yeah, he knew how to play the politics of the area, and then there was so much evidence that had been uncovered in the field.
Yeah.
It just happened very quickly, but
It was also the case that you had, unlike many of your cases undisclosed, you had the buy-in of Brian Bowling's family from the start to at least do the investigation, right? Or did you?
From
did
the
you know?
start, Brian's family was open to talking to us, which was invaluable. I mean, we want to talk to everyone, however they feel about it. We just want anyone to talk to us. We're not going to try and change their mind, but we would want to hear from them. And, you know, they'd heard the story of this case from the prosecutor and from the police for over 2 decades.
And believed it.
Mostly, but they also had questions. So when we knocked on their door, they were like, I mean, they thought that me and Kane were guilty, but they wanted to talk. They wanted to tell us what they knew. And they kept an open mind from the start, which, yeah, made the whole difference, really.
Maybe it might be a good time to introduce one of those family members who has had quite an open mind. She is now actually Lee Clark's partner. So, Amanda, would you like to? So I put you on the spot. This is
Amanda is Brian Bowling's sister. Brian Bowling's a victim. And for 20 some odd years, she thought that Lee was guilty, and now they're living together and just built a fence around their house that he was showing me pictures of about an hour ago. So,
if that's not an open mind, I don't know what is.
And I will say, if I can just sort of digress for a second.
Of course.
One of the things that's extraordinary about this story when it comes to wrongful convictions, and I think, is that the victim's family got on board. And that doesn't happen very often. And it's not something that I think lawyers can do. They can't sort of get people together from the victim side and the convicted side and get them together. And Jacinda and Susan and I spent a lot of time working on that. And Amanda obviously had an open mind, but it wasn't just an open mind. Like, we'll maybe show you a clip later. She and her uncle Michael sat down in a room with Lee's father and talked about this 23 years after the murder. And it wasn't, I mean, it was one of the most beautiful things you'd ever seen. And then Amanda and her uncle got up in court and said, please let them out. They're innocent. That doesn't happen very often in wrongful conviction cases. And I mean, obviously they believed it or they wouldn't have done it. But I think it's something that we've been focusing on in our podcast, like talking to the victims' families and being very open and honest with them. Like, we think that there's a problem and we hope that you're willing to listen to it. And same thing in season 2 of Proof 2.
Yeah, like when we go into the story, we're uncovering stuff as we go along. So we go into a story because we know something doesn't seem right. Something doesn't add up. What that is, we're not sure yet. So we knew in this case, like, it just doesn't make sense that there was a gang of kids who plotted to, like, it doesn't make sense. And if that's true, how come only 2 kids of this gang of kids? Like, so there's a lot of questions. And I think when we first spoke with Amanda, she said, oh, yeah, I have questions and I'd love to have those answered, however it unfolds.
So this might be a good opportunity to kind of segue into the investigation. So I'm actually curious, what were the things initially that made you think this case, what these things, I mean, of course, the gang of kids, why did you decide to pursue this case? And then maybe you could talk a little bit about how you started the investigation.
I mean, a lot of the cases we work on are ridiculous, but this one's the most ridiculous.
So the ridiculous meter is the criteria.
Yeah, like it just from the very start, I was like, I don't even need to hear anymore. This clearly didn't happen. There's nothing about this is real life. Nothing about this is plausible. Just on its face, it made no sense. And there was no compelling evidence to begin with. And the fact that the prosecutor was forced to rely on such tenuous claims, like the whole Bone Thugs and Harmony was the motive basically for the murder. Like, yeah, I'm always skeptical. I'm always going in to any case I work on. Like, I have no opinion till I can do investigation and learn for myself. But from the start with your case, I was like, I'm not thinking this is going to check out.
Yeah.
Well, that does contradict a little bit of your website. You always think everyone's innocent and you always think everyone's guilty. In this case, you were both sort of skeptical going into this.
So from the beginning, yeah, for Lee's case, I'd say I started pretty much certain the case was wrong and they were likely innocent. But that was also a problem because like it's already so absurd to begin with and it worked. So you can't just point out how absurd it is. Like that's already been brought out in court and it was still believed. So in a way it made it harder to investigate.
Where did you start?
Well, Dallas Battle died right before we got down there. So that was unfortunate.
Yeah, so
Lead
the
detective.
lead detective in this case named Dallas Battle, which is like the perfect Southern name for a detective.
He had to draw too.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish Kane was here because he can.
He's a perfect invitation.
Yeah, our first trip down, I think Kevin and I went first. Susan couldn't come. It was COVID. We drove from New York down to Rome, Georgia. And Dallas Battle had died maybe a few
Days.
Days earlier, which
but-
in retrospect may have been good because
Yeah.
people were willing to talk.
Dallas Battle was the lead investigator in the case for this.
It's so great. You talk to people in Rome, Georgia, and say, "Tell us, your experience with Dallas," and they'll say, "I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but," and we're like, "Okay."
Without fail, virtually everyone says
Yeah.
that, including his wife.
Or some did say he's down there now.
Yeah, he's where he belongs was the other comment we would get. But so where did we start our investigation? I don't know. We didn't start with the investigation. We started by meeting Lee's dad. We felt like it was important to meet Lee's dad, to let him get to know us, for us to get to know him, and to just hear the story, not through investigation, but just hear Glenn's story and Lee's story, and that's where we started.
It was a process, right? Because I think it was March of 2020, Jacinta and I, we drove down to Georgia and we met with Glenn, I think for like 2 days, and we filmed an interview with him. Is it 21?
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe.
21, right. Everything's a blur. But and we filmed an interview with him and we talked with him about the story. And I'll tell you a little something. This is informative about wrongful convictions that I think everyone should know, right? Like, we did not go into this making a podcast. That's not what it was. Like, Jacinta and I are producers, and we were going into this like, we're going to make a documentary, and we're going to go out to some of the normal places that we do work with, like Max and different crime networks, and we'll talk to Netflix and Apple. And nobody wanted it. Nobody cared about a wrongful conviction case. Like, wrongful conviction cases are not things that people do. Like, I know that, the Adnan thing is on HBO and Susan's on it, so you can go watch her in the Adnan thing. But like, that's such a famous story. It sort of steps outside the mold of wrongful convictions. Nobody wants wrongful convictions. And I'd be on the phone with these executives, and we've done lots of work with these people, and they're like, well, can you guarantee us an ending? No, I can't guarantee you an ending. Like, if it works out well, he's going to walk out the door, and I can't tell you when that is. And nobody wanted to do it. And then, can you get a celebrity to join on? Well, no, I can't get Tom Hanks to drive around rural Georgia with us.
I could watch that though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'd be
right.
fun to watch.
And they would have bought it had he done it. And so it was a lot of that. And we sort of reached this moment, kind of, we had gotten to know Lee and Glenn, and we hadn't even met Kane yet, but it was so clear that the evidence was so horrific. And we were just working on the Jeff Titus story, and it sort of had changed us from just being kind of regular producers to realizing that we had this power to sort of change the narrative on certain stories for people who were wrongfully convicted. And so we decided to just fund it out of our pocket and just do it as a podcast, and we would add some video stuff, which, financially is really stupid. But that's sort of where we were mentally, because nobody wants to do this stuff. Nobody, like, they all want to be there when somebody walks out, right? But it's the years of work and all of the sort of knocking on the doors that you have to do. And when we do one of these stories, it's literally reinvestigating the case, which I think is what Lee was talking about before. He thought it was just going to be the same lies. It's like, no, these guys were knocking on doors of people who had given statements and finding out why they said it and asking them again, and they were changing, and they were calling me and saying, this story isn't what they said all these years ago, and then come down and we need to go knock on more doors. And it's a very sort of different process, and we just kind of fell into it, right? Like, we had to make the story, basically.
Yeah. And part of that's Glenn, Lee's dad, was he said to us, I've been praying and praying for 23 years that somebody would come my way to save my son. I'm so glad you're here. And we're like,
A lot of
oh,
pressure.
oh, how do you walk away from that?
He said more than that. He said, I know God sent you all.
Yeah, we're like, yeah.
And as a recovering Catholic, that was not what you wanted to hear. And yeah, so we got into this story because we couldn't sell it anywhere, but we couldn't walk away from it.
Maybe we should show the Glenn clip. What do you think?
Okay, so this is like the first day we met Glenn then. Trinity, can we?
Clip 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were in Georgia doing an interview. I think our favorite DP was with us, filming an interview with Glenn. This is Lee's dad.
We may have to shift a bit. I don't know. It's a small stage. I won't fall off the stairs.
What we have to do here? Do I need to move? Do I need to
No, I
move?
don't know. I think it's probably okay.
That's never a good sign.
The rainbow.
He's false.
You think when you have a media company on the panel, you wouldn't have all these technical issues, but you know.
That was the case.
No, we can skip it.
Okay.
Maybe I'll play later.
Maybe we'll play later, yes.
Anyway, Glenn starts talking about how Lee being locked up has changed his life. And he starts crying and he starts talking about how he's held a gun to his head because he didn't want to live. And how he can't sort of get through some days, and he was drinking himself to death, and finally he gave up drinking, and it was really hard. And while he's doing all this, he calls from prison. And it sort of just took this all up to this, like, I don't know, Jacinda and I have done lots of sort of very intimate and sort of intense interviews. And I think that there was something very different about this. This was, you know, everyone on the outside is also locked up.
Yeah.
It becomes painful.
Do you remember that, Lee? Do you remember calling in?
Yeah, I remember calling in. Just calling in just to see what he was doing, checking in on him. And I couldn't tell what was going on by when he picked up the phone there. So I could tell something was going on with him because he kept telling me to hold on, telling me to hold on. And
That's right. He answered the phone,
Yeah.
but he didn't. He kept interviewing with y'all.
Yeah.
He had you on the phone.
And I'm like, what's going on? What's wrong? Are you all right? And he just kept telling me to hold on. And I didn't know what was going on. And I seen the video later, and I knew what was going on. I said, okay. That's what it was.
When you saw the video, how did you feel?
And it broke me down. It broke me down. I knew everything he'd been going through. I knew all the stuff he'd been facing.
You were telling us at dinner last night that, or maybe it was after when we were just sitting around the campfire, that when Glenn would come visit you, there'd be these moments when he went to leave.
Yeah, he'd be leaving the visitation room. Come time to leave, and he'd get this look in his eyes, and I could tell he didn't want to leave. He knew he was leaving, but I wasn't going with him. It wasn't a good feeling. There's something he struggled with, and he had to live with that every day. He knew when he was coming in there and walking out there, and his son was still in there locked up for something he didn't do, and he couldn't go with him. So that was pretty hard on him. He's even harder on me.
I'm just curious. Was it just compounding things for you to think about your father, the way he was feeling while you were inside?
Yeah.
I think it's hard to explain Glenn, right? Like he is the perfect sort of Southern stereotypical man in the best way possible. Like you've never lived till you've had Glenn like pray over you.
Yeah.
Right? But you've also never seen someone experience as much joy as the day that he walked out. Like Glenn was the splash page on CNN the day that they walked out. And like you've never seen a face of joy like this. It's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's also hard when someone's incarcerated, whether they're guilty or not, to maintain relationships with family on the outside. Year after year, family drops off, kids stop calling, parents die. Like, it's really hard to maintain. And those relationships are so important. Again, whether you're guilty or not, those relationships are restorative.
One
And
thing I'll say though, 25 years I was in there. He was there as much as he could be on a regular basis.
yeah, Glenn was there for you every step of the way. And I think in some ways, maybe I'm wrong, tell me, but that's helped your transition.
Oh yeah, it did. It's helped me transition back into society. I mean, the fact of it is right now, I mean, my dad still helps me today. He works with me, as a matter of fact, which I don't think he likes that too much. Once we get out there, I tell him to do something. He said, "Hey, I don't take no orders." I said, "You do today. Get on over and get to it." I don't think he likes that, but he does it anyways.
Lee, can you talk a little bit about what it has been like for you coming out? I know we'll get back to talking more about the investigation, but I think these are really important things that people need to understand what it has been like for you since you've come out.
Well, it's been a lot of joy, a lot of excitement along the way for me because it's all new to me. Everything in front of me is all new. And it's exciting to me, but to sit here and tell you it's been easy, no, it ain't been easy. I've been fighting tooth and nail for everything I get. I'm breaking my back, working, trying to make ends meet like that. I started out when I first got out. I figured I could go to work, maybe in factory work, doing something in the factory on a good line, good job. I figured I might be able to make good money like that. Well, I got in there and I found out real quick that you don't move up as fast as you would like to move up, and you don't make as increase in pay as much as you like. And factory work, it just wasn't working for me. I mean, I sat there and looked at it, and it's been, I mean, I was struggling really bad and wasn't making enough money. I mean, $600 a week. What was I supposed to do with that? I mean, I'm trying to do, yeah. I'm night shift working out, and it's killing me. 3 months I did this on night shift, and I got out there and I said, I can't do this. And I started doing day shift factory work, making a couple of dollars more. It wasn't much more. At the end of it, I just got looking at all of it. I said, I can't do this. This is not working. I said, I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I was sitting there trying to figure it out in my mind, what I got experience at. Nothing. What are you going to do? But then I thought back, well, that's not actually true. You do got a little bit of experience or something. I thought back when I was a teenager and stuff, and I'd go out and I'd cut people's yards, did a lot of landscaping, and I did tree work when I was younger too, as a teenager before I got locked up. So I had a little edge right here on the landscaping. So I said, well, that's what you're going to do right there. Start your landscaping business. And I had to get some help to get it started. I did. I couldn't start it on my own because I didn't have the money to start it. I had to get some help. I got the help and I got it up and started. And I'm proud to say now I'm working my second year into my business, and I'm trying. I'm accumulating clientele. It's coming slowly, but I've got a pretty good clientele list, about over 30 clients now. So doing pretty good.
We were talking last night, and Lee mentioned something that I think many of us who work in this area know. There's actually often many more resources available for people who are released from prison who have actually committed the crimes they were incarcerated for. Virtually nothing, or it's very inconsistent at best for folks who've been released from wrongful imprisonment. And I know it's something that we need to think about.
When you walk out exonerated, like it's like your sentence didn't exist. You don't get parole, you don't get help.
Yeah.
Like I think you were off the Georgia Department of Corrections website because we were looking at it, right?
Yeah.
Like 24 hours.
Yeah,
It was
like
gone.
he didn't exist in the system.
No ID.
Like it was 25
Nothing.
years. It's never happened.
Right.
You just erase it. And it's,
Drop you on the
It's down.
street. Good luck.
yeah.
They
there you
actually
go.
made Lee and Josh, well, you probably wanted to, but take off the prison uniform before coming
But
out.
the underwear too.
The underwear too.
Yeah.
But what do they have to get dressed in? You know, like for Josh, we were FedExing clothes so he would have something to wear in court.
And that's the sad
Like,
part there, though. You take a man that's guilty of a crime, that actually committed his crime now. This man gets out. When they parole him out, he's got all kind of avenues in front of him to help him. He's plugged into all kind of sources to re-entry him back into society. But you're exonerated. You ain't got that. We sorry about what happened. Good luck. We'll holler at you. Get out of here.
Yeah.
That's basically what they did to
The
me.
other film clip. Oh, it seems we have the film clip. Should we, do you want
Yeah,
to try
let's
the
look
first
at
one?
this
Should we
now.
try to do that
Sure,
one?
sure, the
Sure.
Glenn clip, yeah.
Am I in the way?
I don't think so. Maybe. No, this is more promising than before.
Yeah, right? Okay. Well,
Oh, boy.
Well,
I was gonna, let me try to close.
Got the investigation.
sure.
No.
There
Oh, there we go. We've got video, it's just not playing.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. Maybe at the reception, we have the opportunity to play some clips there as well, but so many questions are going through my mind. I know I can't ask all of them, but I guess I do want a few things coming up, but I'm gonna start here. As the investigation was proceeding, I know your investigation, it's being done now for a podcast at this point, you're recording it. There's a number of things that came up that kind of were crucial to the case eventually being overturned. And so can you talk a little bit about those pieces of evidence and how you uncovered them and process there?
So one of the two big pieces of conviction against Lee and Kane, and one of them was a guy named Charlie Childers. He was deaf. He was at Bowling's residence that night, and he supposedly, Dallas Battle wrote a report saying that on the night Brian died, Charlie Childers had looked out a window and seen Lee Clark running by. Now, Charlie, he did know some sign language, but it wasn't standard sign language. He had been isolated from his community. He was kept away from other people in the deaf community, so he didn't speak standard sign. He was hard to interpret. When he was brought into court to testify against Lee, the translator didn't know what to do. She was not prepared. She told us, she's like, if I do it again now, as an adult, as a more experienced interpreter, I would have said right away, I cannot do this. Once things start going off the rails, she should have stopped it. But at the time,
She tried. It was her first
It was her
first time
and last.
interpreting and last.
In court.
And she kept telling the judge, I don't understand what he's saying, and he's not understanding my questions to him. And they sort of bullied her into just
Keep going.
keep going.
So it's hard to even say what his testimony is supposed to be because it's all over the place. But then they allow Dallas Battle to testify and say, oh yeah, Charlie told me, how, who knows, that he saw Lee Clark. And then the prosecutor at trial was even able to have Charlie identify Lee by first failing to get identification and eventually standing right behind Lee and saying, is this who you saw?
Like pointing.
Actually
Hands
put his
on his
hand on me. He
shoulders.
put his hand on me.
And he kind of said, he didn't even say yes, but it was kind of like a acknowledgement that's what it was. But the whole testimony, it's not testimony. It's barely interpretable. It's barely understandable. It's barely functional English. So it's hard to even say what Charlie was actually trying to communicate. And Taya in her introduction was talking about how prosecutors are so powerful. They have powers that we don't even really think about most of the time. What always struck me about this case is the prosecutor went out of his way again and again, and still does, to portray himself as powerless in how things played out. He testified this year before the Georgia Senate about the case. And essentially, his reaction was, well, I knew the case had some problems. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, but what was I supposed to do? The jury returned an indictment, so it was my job to go ahead and prosecute. And he said, well, the detectives, I kind of questioned what they were doing, but who am I to argue with the case that's brought before me? I had to prosecute. But he even said, he was like, this was one of the wildest things I've ever done.
You said it kept getting worse and worse the further.
It kept getting worse and worse.
I
And he
imagine
said
that.
something like, I'm paraphrasing a bit. I was shocked that I was allowed to identify Lee in court that way. But just the way he perceived his role in this whole process was not as an officer of the court who's entrusted to not prosecute bullshit cases, but as someone who is required just to do paperwork and to go ahead and try and send someone to prison for life because that's what the grand jury told him to do.
This Charlie Childers testimony was so absurd that it then became a crucial part of the investigation to find him,
Just to find him,
Right.
which became
which would not have been hard for like 23 years. But as soon as we start this case, he goes off grid.
It took us weeks and weeks to find Charlie. He was transient. He
literally weeks of driving around like middle of nowhere, Georgia, like looking, knocking on doors and going into convenience stores and asking someone if they've seen him, and someone yelling at me one time, I think that's his brother, buy him cigarettes.
Did we ever decide was it him or not?
I think we found out later it was him, that you were right, but yeah.
Do you remember when we finally got the tip? So we got a really good tip. We were actually looking for someone else, but we got a tip on where Charlie might be. And we were heading to the airport and we were going to be late. And we pull over and it happens to be in front of the jail.
Oh yeah.
This is where we pull over, just not on purpose. And
We found him.
like the camera's rolling and we're filming and we're talking, we're calling Kevin, like, we found Charlie, we're gonna have to, cancel our flights. And we see a cop pull up behind us. And I'm like, I'm gonna take off. It felt like a Dukes of Hazzard moment.
Luckily she did not.
I did not.
She's
Susan
so bad in a crisis.
Susan
Just
was
like talk to the officer and not speed away.
It's a good thing the two of you work together.
Yeah.
Anybody who's listened to the podcast knows it's a good thing they're both in that car, I think, at times.
Usually.
usually not when we're on a stakeout because
Oh, no.
she falls asleep. But yeah.
So you did find Charlie, and I think one of the things Jacinda and I had talked about this. The podcast medium is or the audio, it's wonderful, but for some things you just have to see it to understand it, and it's really just too bad that our clips aren't working. Again, we'll try to do it in the after party, but seeing the interview, what was the name of the man who actually helped you to understand Charlie?
Mike Burke.
Yeah, so
Mike.
Mike Burton.
So they found the man who had originally been teaching Charlie sign language and may have been the only person on the planet other than his brother who could
No, brother
understand.
couldn't understand
Who
him.
could
Yeah,
understand
the
him.
only person.
So they took Mike and went to the scene of the crime. And if this was working, you could see Susan reenact what happened running through the yard.
7 months pregnant, I believe.
7 months pregnant. And basically you watch in this video, Charlie, he's not even recanting his testimony. He's saying, that's not what I said.
Yeah, I didn't see anyone that night running. That's not what I said.
That's not what I said.
And we told him the cop said he said that. And he was like, someone should tell her boss.
Someone should talk to their boss. That's not what I said.
So like the only way that in this instance, when you talk about investigation, right, like the only way that you get that information is if you go and you track this guy down and you do it. Right. And that's how we were doing this story. It wasn't just doing interviews. I mean, you're literally knocking on doors and spending weeks looking for people. And I wasn't on that trip. I was on some of these trips, but I wasn't on that one. But it was like daily updates from them. Like, we struck out on this one, and we got this, but we struck out. We can't find Charlie. And you start to understand that finding him is going to be the key factor to finding out what happened that night and maybe being the key to getting him out. And you start to become sort of personally invested in finding Charlie. I think at one point I even said to her, like, do I need to come down there and just fucking do this myself? Like, are you gonna find him?
And it wasn't just finding Charlie, though. It was also along the way before this, we happened to meet Mike Burton, who was the father of the interpreter at trial. So it was a coincidence we even
Right.
ran into him and talked to him and learned of his connection to Charlie. But without that, us talking to Charlie wouldn't have really helped. We've just been recreating the same mistakes before because we thought we could maybe understand him. We were wrong because we had no idea the real story, which is that he witnessed a different shooting of different teenage boys across the street. 20 years before that.
And you can't imagine what it was
Yeah.
like for me sitting in there, having to go through this, listen to all this.
Mhm.
I'm sitting there like, man, what is going on here? What is this? What are we doing here? I mean, I was over tripping out. I ain't never seen it like that before in my life. I don't think I'll never go through anything like that again in my life. That was the oddest thing I've ever been through.
Lee, what started to happen to you when you found out that they found Charlie and they got this information? What was going on for you while you were inside? Were you getting hopeful?
Oh yeah, yeah. By then I was getting real hopeful about stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff was coming out, but the thing with Charlie, I mean, all that right there. I mean, when all that stuff came out, and I found out this what Dallas had did, how far he went with him. I mean, that disgusted me so much. As if I could physically throw my soul up. That's what I'd want to do. That's how sick it made me. I mean, it just made me sick to my soul just looking at all that stuff, that you could take a man that's got a disability like it and you just use it to your advantage and just turn it into whatever you want to turn it into.
There's no possibility that Dallas Battle could have spoken or
No.
communicated with Charlie Childers in any way. And
Not
he tries
without
to
Mike
explain
Burton.
it.
Yeah.
He explains it as that Charlie's brother interpreted for him.
His brother
Charlie's brother cannot
communicate
talk
with
to him. Yeah.
His brother could not communicate with him, period.
This wasn't the only witness, right? There was another witness that was coerced. The name is escaping me right now, but hopefully you all remember it.
Angela
Angela.
Bruce.
That's right.
That
Tell us
was
what happened?
one right there.
With Angela?
Yeah.
Angela was a witness that was important because she claimed that a few months after the night of the murder, Lee and Josh were at her house bragging about doing the killing
No, she said this is in February '97. That's when she claimed that we were over
in February.
February '97.
And this is October. Yeah.
All this happened with Brian in October. She claimed all this happened in February of '97.
Yeah, that they were over at her house and they were bragging and that they had committed this murder and they were kind of threatening that they would do it again if anyone got on their wrong side. So we needed to talk to her. We needed to talk to everyone who was allegedly at that same party that night, but we also need to talk to her. And we pulled up into her yard and she comes out, which is never a good sign when
Yeah.
they get out
They
before
come,
you're
like,
even out the
halfway,
door.
you're like, well, we're
You're like, oh no, this is this.
Yeah.
So Susan gets out of the car, 7 months pregnant, and it's like, oh, do you think I could sit down for a minute? And she's like, yeah, come sit down. And
Say no to that.
then we knew we were in at that moment. So
And she wanted, like, it did bother her. She told us she'd do it again for her kids, but it bothered her she'd done this. The story was that she'd testified about this confession because, well, for a lot of reasons, but big reason being the detectives had told her they would take her kids away, essentially. They would find a reason to get her kids, take them away with CPS if she didn't.
Yeah.
So in order to protect her family, she's like, yeah, I did it then, I'd do it now.
and she spoke straight into the mic to Lee and Kane, apologizing and asking for forgiveness. But what was interesting about her, though, is we weren't the first people to try to go and talk to her, but we were the first people who she would talk to. And I think it's because we're not detectives, we're not law enforcement, we're not, I mean, you're an attorney, but you're not working as an attorney. So there's, it's important who you send to talk to someone. If you're sending a detective to talk to someone who's been threatened by detectives, chances are they're not going to talk. So
I think for Angela assumed or thought that we would understand in a way that the cops that tried to talk to her, the male former cops that talked to her, we'd understand the scenario she presented with, like the coercion she was
what
under.
if someone threatened to take your baby, right? That's basically
What she was
what
saying.
she was saying.
Yeah, so she thought we'd understand that, we did, and she was willing to tell us the truth, which is that, yeah, no, that confession never happened. She'd been asked to say that.
Just want to note the time. If folks have written down questions, maybe a couple of my students could just walk around and grab those and bring them up when you get a chance. But I do, there's a couple of, maybe 2 more questions I have for the group before we switch to audience questions. I want to get to this topic, and we haven't really gotten to it yet. I alluded to it earlier. so the Proof podcast is, on the one hand, as we discussed last night, you could just consider it as another, part of the true crime space, right? It's a true crime podcast, but it's different, right, in the sense that you're really inserting yourselves in many ways into the criminal justice system, and additionally, you're, as Jacinta just pointed out, you're not attorney. You're an attorney, but not a criminal attorney. You're a storyteller. You call yourself not a journalist. And he's like, and how do you navigate these things? How do you kind of distinguish yourself? And what are the ethical questions or difficulties or challenges that you come up? Sorry, that was a bit of a messy question. Let me fine tune it a little bit. How do you tell a compelling story that keeps audiences listening, but also remain that integrity to the case and the facts and pursuing justice? How do you balance those two things?
Well, get way too detailed, get way too into the weeds is my personal strategy to tell the comprehensive case. Don't gloss over the details. There's parts of the case that might not be entirely thrilling, but are vital to the legal framework. And trying to convey that to listeners to explain why it matters is part of it.
And you also just tell an honest story, right? Like when we started with Lee, we told them we're going to tell all the worst parts about you too.
Right.
Like this is an important thing to do. I mean, Jacinta and I have been doing, interviews with people for decades, and this is no different in the sense you have to tell an honest story. And I do think that there's, become this kind of like true crime genre that everyone talks about now. I don't really know that I think that this falls into that. I think it's an investigative piece. I think it's a human story, and we're sort of using what we do to try and solve this mystery and get somebody out of a box. And we have to be convinced that they're innocent. Like, we don't go into stories and like, oh man, like, how do we get this guy out? No matter what they argue about over whiskey, it's you have to find out what the truth is, and we're looking for the truth. And so I think it gets kind of folded into this true crime thing, but I don't think that's how any of us look at it.
Yeah.
We don't always, it is hard to balance entertainment. We do go really deep into the weeds, but it still has to be entertaining for the listeners or who's going to listen. And our second season, A Case Out of California, we talked to this bug lady about decomposition and bug, and it was
That's fascinating. What are you talking about?
I think these things are fascinating.
it's fascinating for some people, but 30 minutes on that, where do you draw the line? How do you keep it entertaining but also provide what's needed for the legal framework to actually help someone get out? And so it is challenging. There's many drafts, but our goal, we try to strike that balance.
I think the answer is we are true crime, we are advocacy, we are journalism, and I've stopped worrying about what the combination of that is.
Yeah, it's a very different world. Yeah, I'm keep doing what you're doing, but we all know, right? The podcasts out there that just regurgitate things that have already been and give an opinion, and it's hard, I guess, for maybe the audience to know how do I find the ones that are. But in the interest of time, I want to maybe end with this question before we get to audience questions. Lee, given though, yes, it's an investigative podcast, and yes, this is all the things that Susan just mentioned, but it is also entertainment. And what does it feel like for you to know that your story is being consumed by millions of people as a form of entertainment to a degree? I mean, it's your story.
Well, I actually like to view it as being looked at as a form of entertainment myself. I don't view it that way. I look at it like something being viewed as educational myself. I think people need to be educated by this. They need to be educated by the dangers of this. But I mean, you look at me, I was a young kid back in breaking in places, doing stupid stuff. And here I am. I get on the radar of a bad cop that chooses to do something really nasty to me because I'm making bad decisions. And I don't know, it's just, I think it's a learning experience that people should see just all the corruptness. I mean, how corrupt the system is. I mean, the system is broke. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. This system is broke. It's broke slap in half. And it needs to be fixed. It needs to be put right.
The one thing I want to add on Lee saying that the system is broke, right? There's a flip side too of once someone's in there, you really kind of got to get them out one by one. right? Like, it's different than fixing the system. Once they're already in there, you got to find a way to get them out. And that's a different thing than fixing the system. And that's kind of what we're at work with. And that's really hard, and it's time consuming, and it's expensive, and it's oftentimes heartbreaking because you can't do it for everyone. I mean, the cases that we take are the ones that Susan decides that legally there's a chance that the needle can be moved for someone, right? Like,
Plenty of cases where I'm like, you look like you're probably innocent, but I just don't see any way we're gonna help.
there's no path forward. And those are heartbreaking conversations.
There are so many great questions here, actually, and I can't believe that we've already, well, we did start late. I'm going to actually turn to some of these. We won't get to all of them, but I hope, I'm assuming that most of you will be coming to the after party. So if I didn't get to your question, please ask over there. But a few questions, we should probably just address this issue. A few people asked about compensation, and maybe we should talk about the issues surrounding wrongful conviction and compensation. Lee, do you want to start? And then
Yeah, I can address that issue right there, because I'm happy to address that issue. I just recently, a bill has been passed and been up in Atlanta and stuff. Is a bill to pay all of the wrongfully convicted people. And
So Georgia was one of 10, 11 states
Yeah.
where there was no
they
system in
did
place
not
for
have anything
compensation.
in place for it. Nothing at all. And I'm happy to say that I played my part in getting that bill passed. I went up to Atlanta. I stayed there in Atlanta. I was diligent about it. I wasn't going to just give up on it. I just knew that if I just stayed there, I just felt it. It was only right. It was time for something to change in this state. Not in this state, but in the state of Georgia. I don't know what I'm talking about this state. I'm not even in Georgia anymore, but sorry, I get a little nervous up here. But it was time for something to change in the state of Georgia. Georgia, it's been like this forever. And here it is, it's 2025. And Georgia's not the only state, granted, that does not pay the wrongfully convicted. You got other states that don't pay wrongfully convicted people too. And I think that needs to change in those states as well. It needs to change everywhere. If you got states that do not pay wrongfully convicted people, that's not right. You take a man and you wrongfully convict that man, and you took his whole life from him, and then you just release that man. What do you expect that man to do? I was 43 years old when I was released from prison.
How old were you
43.
when then?
Yeah, how
How
old
old
were
were
you?
you when you went in? How old were you?
I was 18 when I went in. I was 43 when I got out. I'm 46 now. And I tell you, it's not easy. Compensation needs to be in all states for all the wrongfully convicted that's ever been wrongfully convicted in prison like that. They need something that they can start on. They need a foundation.
Well, it is in Georgia now.
Yeah, it is. And I'm
But it's not
happy.
automatic.
But
So
It's not an automatic thing. You still got a process you got to go through. But
So just a quick backstory on the law, like they voted this bill down in Georgia twice since Lee got out. And didn't matter that he was standing there saying, look at me. And then it changed last year, they voted it in, but it's still gonna be another year before you can even apply, right?
the applying process, I could actually start right now,
Okay.
but it's just early stages, and we just really don't.
They're still trying to figure out how
You're
it
still,
works.
you're still trying to figure out how
So
everything
they-
works. We got to be told how everything works before we can start the procedure. Basically, what we're trying to
Still
figure
have to
out.
Yeah.
appear in front of a
And then-
judge and kind of
Yeah, you got to
argue
get.
your
It's
case.
just all a process now.
And then like certain states give you compensation right away. Like Jeff Titus got out. I think he got a check he was in for 20 years. I think he got $1 million in like 90 days or something like
Yeah.
that.
He got out in February and he had a check by like May or June or something, which is, so his life is completely different.
But I
you
do
know?
Yeah,
want
like
to
Jeff
add
has a
something to
house
this
and-
about this bill that passed. I want to let this be known in case this does get out there. I want to let it known to be Katie Dempsey. She's a representative in the state of Georgia, and she put the footwork in on this. She put all this footwork in there. Sir Senator Scott
some
Holcomb up
family
there,
living in
they
Georgia
did all
needs to
this.
listen to that and keep that in mind.
They put all the footwork in here, and Katie Dempsey, she's a really great woman, and I'm really thankful to have had her in my corner. I really am.
And then, the avenue open to all of them, and he's not going to talk about it because got one going, but it's civil lawsuits. But those are time consuming and
Guarantees.
no guarantees. And most of these are situations where, you know, lawyers are getting a percentage of the money, and there are no guarantees. So it's,
Also, something I think there are 2 points I really want to add here about this. One is that just most of you may know this, but the United States doesn't have a legal system. It has multiple legal systems, and every state is very different, and so there's a lot of inconsistencies across the board, and so sort of the larger point. But the other thing is we definitely want a movement to see more opportunities for compensation across the states. But I also think something we haven't touched on too much tonight, which hopefully we will later on tonight, is yes, we want to compensate people who've been wrongfully convicted, but we also really want to stop wrongful convictions before they occur. And the things that happen in these cases, in his case, you've got some really identifiable misconducts and coerced witnesses and things like that. But sometimes wrongful convictions are a result of just human psychology getting in the way in a system that has too many degrees of freedom for the decision makers. And so, yes, we want compensation, but we also want to stop this from happening in the first place. I just want to, hopefully tonight you'll learn about some of those other things.
Well,
And,
they're related too, though.
yeah, they are
Compensation
related.
it hits them where it hurts, their pocketbook. So it gives them a
Yes.
good reason to not
Gives
screw
them-
up in the future.
Gives them a good reason to think about reforms that are going to help. Yeah. To grow can time, Lee. This question I think is one we talked a little bit about last night, but I would love to hear you discuss it tonight. What was most surprising to you about the world after being released?
Most surprised to me, the world. All the technology out here, it's gotta be. I mean, I get
Tell
out.
that iPhone story.
Oh, my dad, I get out, he hands me this phone, he's talking about here, get that. I gave him the phone, I said, what, I don't want that. He said, you're gonna have to have this out here, man. Everybody uses them, you're gonna need it too. I said, well, I'll take it. And he gave it to me, I got looking at it, I didn't know how to do nothing on there. It was like I was looking at a spaceship. I'm sitting there looking at this thing, I said, well, all right, whatever. I stuck it in my pocket, didn't think nothing about it. I got it in there. We over the family reunion now. And here comes my little 18-year-old cousin, bebopping in the room. What's up, cuz? I just looked over, I said, oh, here we go. I said, what's up, Natalie? She said, let me see your phone, cuz. I said, what you want to see my phone for? I want to do something for you. I said, all right. I handed her my phone. I'm telling you, there was smoke flying off the phone. Doing all that stuff, handed it back to me. She said, here you go, cuz. I looked at it, got a Facebook account on there, got everything on there, all of it. This is right here, put a bunch of dating apps on my phone. Yeah.
Before Amanda.
Yeah,
before Amanda.
Before
What's she
Amanda,
talking about?
she's looking at me.
She looked right over at her.
This is right when we
She's
first
gonna
got
check,
out.
are they still on there?
No, I wrecked all them.
We had a photo shoot for his dating profile.
We did actually, right, at Mitchum House, yeah.
But I've got that. I solved that problem.
I remember we were driving the night they got out, the car, not having keys, just pushing a button for the car. They were like,
Oh.
what is this? Like, where are
Look,
your
and
keys?
that what freaked me out is my attorneys. We went out to dinner and she said, come over here and stand here. I'm gonna show you something, trip you out. I'm standing over. I ain't thinking nothing about it. I see this car backing up to us. I think they're finna back up and they pull off. This car backs up to us and she's like, come on, let's get in. I said, do what? And I looked and it was her car. I didn't pay no attention. It was her car. And I said, how did that work right there? And she pushed the button and the car just backed up to her. I said, okay. All right. Might not need to get in there. Yeah. Trip right there.
Time for a couple more, I think. Actually, I want to let you know that someone in the audience says that you look like Vincent Van Gogh. So I
know who that is. So
I
you know,
have to say I agree. I agree.
I want to
He,
see.
he was a crazy painter.
An artist, a painter.
It's not a compliment.
I want to see pictures too.
Is he
She
the one
tells
that
me all
cut
the time
his
I'm crazy.
Yes.
So
Yeah, he cut his ear off.
good as zero.
Yeah, because he was crazy.
Blood
All the
poisoning.
time.
Listen, I was just about to ask this question that someone else had written. The second one came in similar. A number of people who are who have been exonerated after spending a long time in prison, still face a lot of problems in society, right? So individuals are sometimes, they're not believed. Some people still believe they're guilty, or they think something must have happened while you were in prison. Now you're a bad guy. And so the two questions that came in are, have you been treated differently, or have you felt any of that stigma associated with?
No, believe it or not, up there in Rome, where I'm from, that county right there, they accepted me. They welcomed me with open arms. They know the story, and they all stand behind me 100% up there. I've got nothing but open armed invitations from everybody. I mean, a lot of love come from Floyd County up there. Not everybody knows the truth up there. I mean, that's basically, I mean, tell you the truth, that's how I built my business. I mean, everybody knowing the truth about my stuff. That's how I built my business. That's where I'm at now.
It was pretty amazing that the day of the hearing when they got out, the courtroom was packed. It was standing room only. Like everyone was there. You know, the judge allowed everyone to cheer. So
I think that these guys became celebrities, and it's actually, it's a county that they'd never had a wrongful conviction before, which is kind of mathematically impossible. And like, you know, I mean, and
I think I was going to say that.
and not even just, you know, misconduct. I'm just talking about mistakes happen. I mean, we were talking about it last night. I mean, the legal system is no different than the medical system. Like, mistakes happen in treatment or whatever. But I think that everybody was waiting for that moment. So like the three of us are sort of in this room off the courtroom before it happens. I like this really nice sort of bailiff gave us a room, and they set it up, and people who worked in the courthouse kept coming by talking to us about the case. Like, everyone in that county was waiting for the day. And these guys became sort of famous, and I think everybody knows Lee there, and everybody wants him to succeed. And there have been a few really helpful people in the community, like the woman who runs the film festival down there.
Leanne Cook.
Leanne is like, she and her husband have been
Such a
wonderful,
blessing.
just like getting them clients. And
Great woman.
and you know, you need people to treat you right. And as you're pointing out, that doesn't always happen when people get out. You know, lots of people just assume, oh, the person's guilty. I think in his case, everyone was waiting for some of this stuff to just stop in Floyd County. And,
I think Josh, who couldn't be here tonight, it's been different for him. He ended up leaving Floyd County for a variety of reasons, and now he lives out of state. And it's very different for him. When he goes to apply for a job, they're like, show us your job history. He has 25 years with no job history. And I'll say, well, show them an article, show them the New York Times article, show them the CNN article. And they'll be like, I don't believe that. Like, you know, it's really, really hard. And one of the reasons he's not here is because he can't get his real ID to fly here. Like, it's every step of the way is hard. So
you need people to believe in you, and you have to be, you know, a little lucky when you get out, and it doesn't, it's hard. And I mean, I think things are going about as well for you as you could possibly imagine. And it's still hard.
it's still not easy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I couldn't ask for things to be going better, but it's still a struggle every day. I mean, I'm sitting here with my business. I'm juggling that back and forth. I mean, and it's only my second year running a business. I don't know much about running a business. I lean on my dad a lot for that, because my dad ran his own business for years. He's my ace in the hole. He's who helps me out the most. When I get out there and I got a problem, I don't know how you solve this. He's got the answer for me. He knows how to solve it. So
Hopefully we can see some of those videos of your dad in the next room.
yeah, man, my dad, that's my right hand right there. I don't know what I'd do without him. It's my right hand.
I think it's also important for folks just to know that it's really hard to undo a conviction in the United States. So when you see 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, these tip of the iceberg. We have a problem with wrongful conviction in this country, and I know it's hard it's hard to believe, because it's a terrible narrative. Nobody wants to believe that. We don't want to think that our system is broken. And that's not to say most convictions are correct, but we have a problem with wrongful conviction in this country. And so getting somebody out, Lee's case went relatively quickly. Took 2 years from start to finish, but he was in for 25, okay?
I will say
That's not
this, though.
fast, yeah.
When I was exonerated, We made history the day I was exonerated. I was the first ever case in the state of Georgia to ever be exonerated on non-DNA related. First ever one right here. You looking at it. I made history.
We have time
And
for
I ain't
one-
done yet neither.
We have time for one more question, and then everyone whose questions I missed, again, please bring them and let's have a nice time next door. But I guess the last question, then I do have one last thing I want for Lee to talk about. But have there been any meaningful reforms in Georgia, in Rome, since Lee and Joshua's cases?
I'm aware of.
And it's fair to say that most of the time, there's really no repercussions for prosecutors who engage in misconduct. It's extremely, extremely difficult. I actually think I know of one case.
Prosecutors are totally safe.
Have you-
Almost every time. There's like one or two cases.
I know of one, one
I know
case in
two.
Texas.
Literally two in all of America where a prosecutor managed to go too far. And to go too far as a prosecutor, you gotta go so freaking far.
They were prosecuted as a prosecutor.
Yeah. But that's like blatantly fabricating, lying under oath, and getting caught red-handed. Short of that, if you're a prosecutor, you're fine.
Yeah, you got that qualified immunity.
So I think to wrap up the discussion, I think I'd like to end with Lee telling us, Lee, at the end of the day, this is your story. You had 25 years taken away from you. What do you want to leave with the audience tonight? What do you want us to take away from your story?
Well, I mean, I just speak to y'all is, people, we're what controls this country. We are. We would change stuff. We put laws in effect. We can change all this stuff. And I implore anybody just going into any kind of stuff, to any kind of law work, if you're doing this stuff, go into it and try to change it for the better. Try to fix this broken system if you're going into it. Because I'd love to play my part in whatever I can do in it to fix it. Because it's broke. And I'm trying to do all I can do to fix it. But one person can't do it alone. Everybody's got to chip in. It's all of us going to have to do it together.
And a big part of the problem is prosecutors, like the one in your case, think they're powerless to do something different.
And this,
They're absolutely not.
You're the most powerful player in the system.
yeah, they are. And it's sad that it'll come down to something like this, and we could change all this. And that's just what I say is, we as a country, we need to come together and change it all. Because this don't need to be happening. Because what happened to me does not need to ever happen to anybody. Because I went through a nightmare that I'll never forget. And that never needs to happen to anybody else again. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
I said I was going to give Lee the last word, but actually I'm going to have one more word, and then Jacinda and Kevin are going to have a word. But I just wanted to make a note after what Lee and Susan just said. Apart from coming to these things and talking to other people and maybe donating, vote in elections for prosecutors. That's one of the most important things anyone can do. And I venture to guess, like, most people I know wouldn't even think about who's running for vote for your prosecutor.
The quickest change. hands
Quickest
down.
change you can make. You guys wanna do that?
Voted in at Bird Floyd County.
Yeah. We just want to say a couple of quick things before we leave. Lee's story is just one of the few, as we were pointing out, but there are so many more, and we're at work on others. And in fact, in sort of probably mid-December, early January, we're going to be dropping season 3 of Proof. And we'd ask everyone to listen. And this is going to be a very unique experience because it's a story about a man who spent 25 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. And a couple of weeks ago, we helped get him out, and he died 62 hours later from cancer.
Oh my God.
So part of the process is getting his exoneration and all of these other people who are waiting for it in this state at the same time. So sometimes out of tragedy, you have to come up with something good. And that's what we're going to be working for in this season. And so we're going to ask you all to come along, because the joy this time isn't going to be somebody walking out. It's going to be proving what happened and then getting the other people who are still suffering out. But it's going to be one of the most important things we've ever done. And it's going to be, no offense, Lee, a lot harder than your case,
Oh,
where it
yeah,
was just crazy.
everything's harder to find. Don't cut no easier than mine.
Yeah. The other thing that I'll say is to just keep looking next year for an announcement. We plan to start a nonprofit to use media to overturn wrongful convictions, because it is impossible in the entertainment industry to get people to pay for it. We pay for it out of our pockets, and we go and try and sell ads, but we want to be able to just sort of spend our time when we're doing these wrongful convictions, like, this is what we're working on and we need the public's help to do it. We don't want it to be entertainment. We want this to be things that people are actively involved in the community and contributing to. So keep an eye out for that. That will be coming probably in the first quarter of next year. And thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. Tierney, can you tell us what's happening next?
We are going to go next door to the Cohen Lounge, and there is refreshments, coffee, water, tea, cookies. There's vegetarian options. There's also
Lots of food.
there's food. Yeah, go eat. There's cheese and meat and charcuterie stuff. So yes.